Longlegs is this, like, there's a character named Longlegs. It's this kind of crime thriller, kind of Silence of the Lambs-esque sort of vibe. There's this Longlegs killer, this female detective going after, very similar to Silence of the Lambs in that regard, in terms of like kind of agent. Tone, FBI agent, that sort of thing. Dark tone, kind of
very bleak movie.
Very bleak, very moody movie. And it's that investigation, and it's like, okay, what exactly is going on here? How is this Longlegs killer doing these crimes, committing these murders, and kind of pulling back the layers of this investigation while some very evil stuff is going down.
Yes.
And what it can explain that evil stuff.
Yes.
Very much in the horror genre. This very disturbing.
Yes, this movie has been quite hyped at this point. Prior to its release, I think the marketing team for this movie has done a very good job because, one, they have pretty much all of the trailers from what I understand. And Jimmy didn't even remember watching the initial trailer. I don't remember much from it. But they've kept it very vague. They have kept like the antagonist reveal completely out of the marketing. It's not in the marketing at all. And they have like a lot of preview reactions to this are people being like, this movie's so scary, it's gonna make you want to stab glass in your eyes or something. It's very visceral reactions that people seem to be having, at least prior to this release. And so a lot of people were hyped for that. Our theater was packed
on a Thursday night, which never not happened.
Thursday night for happened. This like independent horror film. It's pretty impressive. And this is Neon's the distribution company. It's their biggest opening weekend. Seems to be by far. Seems to be doing quite well. But I really liked this movie a lot. Actually, I really liked it. What did you think?
I do like it a lot. I don't think it's like a perfect movie, but I did really enjoy it.
Issues. But I think there is a lot to really enjoy about this movie.
Yeah, and I think it would probably be worth seeing a second time at some point.
I think I'm going to try to see it next week, maybe when I'm with my family, because they're going to want to see it. So
because I do think there's a lot of ambiguous things going on and a lot of weird things going on, that you get a lot of information. Even though it's kind of a slow burn, you do get pummeled with information throughout, and I think when you get to the end, going back to the beginning and kind of being able to see where everything is leading,
I think that
might enhance your experience, and you definitely, I think, would pick up on more.
Yeah, it feels like a movie that has a lot of these small details that are kind of strewn throughout that you'd notice more on a second
little clues to kind of give you insight to put that picture, put the puzzle together as you're watching it. But I thought this was very well directed.
Yes.
With really good performances, very well shot in ways to give you lots of anxiety while you're watching this movie.
Well, yeah,
there's shots where it's like hallways in the background or doorways or
most of this
open windows and stuff that's just very unsettling.
Most of this movie is done in like wide shots. There's not a whole lot of getting up close with the characters or anything, except for in like maybe a couple key moments. But yeah, that leads to the anxiety, because you just have a character at one side of the frame, and then you'll have like a dark corner or something. You're like, is there something there? It's
a lot of just disturbing imagery as well. Not necessarily like graphic per se, just like very just like, oh gosh, that's just terrifying if I were to see that in real life.
Yeah. And I think with all the hype going into this movie, I think it's important to temper expectations in the way that at least I wasn't like outright scared for it. And granted, I'm not easily scared with horror movies. Very creeped out. I think this movie gave me that a very intentional sense of anxiety and just dread and everything. I was feeling a lot of what the movie was putting forth. I wouldn't say I was like outright terrified or anything in this movie. I wasn't,
I was able to sleep fine that night.
Exactly. Yeah. That kind of thing. But it was easily the most creeped out I've been by a movie in a while, I would say. So
disturbed, unsettled,
good words to describe it.
There are specific like things or like shots or sounds or combinations of those that like sometimes play on for like several seconds.
Yeah.
Some of them are jump scary things, some of them are not. And it's just like, wow, I don't like this.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
you're not supposed to like it. It's like, oh my goodness, this visual and this soundscape is just very unsettling and disturbing, and meshed with the tone and of the rest of the movie, the mood of what's going on here. This backdrop of just so gloomy.
Yeah.
And dark. It's very effective.
And the music, I think, really enhances it quite a bit too. I off the top of my head, I can't really remember any specific tracks, but I remember in the moment it being quite effective for the movie itself. So that's all great.
I think it's a slow burn, but I think it's paced pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't think it really goes on too long, or there's not a level of intrigue there. I think it's pretty interesting throughout.
Yeah, I would say maybe there's like a part in middle chunk before things really get going, where it's just kind of investigation. Some of the investigative elements were a little unsatisfying for me, just in how they were kind of uncovered for the characters. So that kind of aspect, like the clues that the characters follow and stuff, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but for the most part, I was on board, I'd say.
Yeah. I thought Micah Moore's performance as the lead.
Micah
Monroe.
She's.
I thought Michael Moore's performance. I think Micah Monroe's
She's a girl from It Follows.
Yes, which I still haven't seen. I haven't seen that.
She's great in this movie. She seems to be a kind of a favorite for horror movies. She's done several, so she's very good in this. Very subdued performance.
Yeah,
for most
it is, but it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it definitely blends in with the rest of the vibe of the movie.
Yeah, it does. I think.
And it's also a big contrast to Nick Cage's performance as Longlegs, which I think they do a really good job of giving you just enough of him and not too much.
Yes. I wasn't sure if we were going to mention that in non-spoilers or not, but
okay.
It doesn't matter. I mean, they say
in
it
the opening
opening
credits.
credits.
Nick Cage. So.
But Nick Cage is he's great in this movie.
Yeah,
I'd say. And we can talk about more about that performance and spoilers, but
yeah, absolutely.
Osgood Perkins, director writer of this, he's not the movie kind of gives the vibe, especially since it's neon, that it's like a first time director maybe, but like regardless, a very talented debut. He's done other stuff. I've never seen it. I've heard The Black Coat's Daughter is pretty decent. But I'm not really familiar. He did that Gretel and Hansel movie, which I thought wasn't supposed to be very good, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with most of his movies, but this one's very good. So good for him. Son of Anthony Perkins, the actor of Norman Bates in Psycho. So
very interesting. The legacy of horror.
Yeah, absolutely.
Runs through his veins.
It does.
A lot of this really well done. I don't want to say too much because I just don't want. I want people to go in kind of open-minded, like I got the chance to do. I literally didn't know anything. I didn't know it was a serial killer thing. I didn't know anything about it.
Surprisingly funny at times.
Yeah, a couple funny moments.
Yeah, I'd say there's moments that are very intentionally funny in this movie, which I think do not at all detract from the overall tone. I think there's something to be said about that, just how well it balances that, because you have this, just never-ending dread and dark tone throughout this movie, occasionally broken up by some very intentional jokes, and it never really feels out of place.
No, I think it works like Hereditary a lot in that regard, because Hereditary is also a very funny
They have
movie.
Hereditary and this have a very similar tone, I would say, in general. I got that while watching this movie, and while I have only seen Hereditary the one time and have personally not been that big of a fan of it, I do the tone I vividly remember from it and get a lot of vibes.
Well, I'm a huge Hereditary fan. I think it's a near perfect movie.
There you go.
And I think this is the closest we've gotten to Hereditary since Hereditary that I've seen.
Sure.
I don't think it's quite as good. I don't think it's quite as polished, but it's not too far off. So if you liked Hereditary, I think you're going to really dig this. If you didn't like Hereditary, maybe this is not the movie for you. But,
I didn't like Hereditary, and I like this.
Okay. This is more if Hereditary and Silence of the Lambs had a baby.
Yeah. I think if the crime, if you're weary about the horror aspects, obviously that's fine. But there's a lot of the crime thriller aspect is a huge part of this that I think you can really get into. I haven't seen Zodiac. I've heard a lot of Zodiac comparisons with this too. So you've seen Zodiac,
I've seen
right?
Zodiac. Yeah, I didn't think of. I mean, Zodiac's dark and gloomy. And it's about investigating a serial killer. So sure, but I got more Silence of the Lambs.
Sure, yeah. When I definitely get that. Yeah. The Silence of the Lambs aspect.
But sure, I mean, absolutely. Holden, you want to give your rating, and that's it. Yeah, your rating.
Yeah,
final thoughts.
Yeah,
and then we can go into our spoiler discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great movie. I think there is a solid chance this could be in my top 10 of the year by the end of the year. We'll see. Just because, and I think that's kind of rare because I don't usually have horror movies that high in general. I feel like I guess like Barbarian we saw a couple years ago was your number one, obviously. But aside from like that, a lot of big theatrical horror movies don't usually land with me this well. But I loved this a lot. I think this is like a 9 out of 10 for me. So I don't really have many issues aside from like a little dip in the middle. That's about all the issues I have with this. So, what about you, Jimmy? Who would you recommend this to?
I just said it. The Hereditary, Silence of the Lambs, had a baby, that sort of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad it's doing well at the box office too.
Yeah.
It's got a strong start. We'll see if it has long legs.
I do. I mean, this is one of those movies that absolutely I think is going to be a split opinion to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah.
Like I mean,
it is. There's moments where it's out there.
Yeah.
It does not pull any punches.
No. But I think it's still cool that people are going out and checking it out, and it is doing very well. It's already made. It's already making money, I think.
Yeah.
So.
They just need to make more movies like this.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah.
I don't know why studios overcomplicate it. They're like, if we spend a lot of money on a movie, then it's gonna make a lot of money, right?
Or if you just spend a little money and market it well, it'll probably make its money back and then some.
Just spend a little money on a good movie.
Yeah.
And horror is a great avenue for that. I don't like. Horror movies are just like
horror movies too.
The gold mine.
Yeah, they really are. Blumhouse makes a lot of money.
Yeah. So there we go. Let's dive into spoilers. If you have not seen it, skip over this unless you don't care about getting it spoiled for whatever reason. But you should.
You should.
Longlegs,
it's a good movie.
Good movie. It's worth seeing out in the theaters. All right, we're gonna dive into spoilers after this little jingle.
One thing I didn't mention in non-spoilers, but Neon seems to be like killing it right now, right? They had a lot of pretty good looking trailers before this movie. Like we were a little late, but pretty much all the ones we saw were like Neon movies. They got the Palme d'Or movie bought, and that's going to be releasing later this year. But I mean, of course, they released like Parasite in the U.S. and I think what won Best Picture last year? They didn't do Oppenheimer. There's a couple like Best Picture winners in the last few years that I think they've like distributed. I don't know. They're kind of underrated. I feel like A24 takes a lot of the spotlight that they
seem to
share.
Be their movies seem to be a little bit more divisive than A24. It's like A24, but gonna be more hit or miss for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, everyone likes Parasite, seems to be.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
Longlegs, Holden. That intro sequence.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Whoa, I was like, jeez.
Starts right out of the gate.
I jumped a few times. And it's like I'm a person who jumps during jump scares, even if I know there's gonna be a jump scare. But there were some that were just
this movie does jump scares pretty well.
Like just out of nowhere jump scares, I think, in this one. And jeez, just Nick Cage. His makeup is disturbing. He just, man, very unsettling. He does really blend in the character. There's times I think really when he gets louder and starts like doing the Nick Cage like screaming, singing stuff, then you're like, okay, this is Nick Cage.
But if you didn't see that opening title card, if you didn't go in knowing Nick Cage was in this, I could see people just not recognizing him in that role. And he is great. I think this is a role that's like the movie going to be kind of divisive just because some of it is like kind of funny, but like in a disturbing way. It rides that line quite a bit,
especially at the end.
Yeah. Well, the end
It
I
says
think
"Hail
is,
Satan," and he blows a kiss.
I think
and our theater
that's-
is laughing. And I think
yeah.
you're supposed to.
I think that part's definitely supposed to be funny, but I think a lot of the rest of it, he's like, I think his look, especially based on what he's singing, seems to be based on like hair metal bands and stuff, because he's singing a lot of stuff from like the 80s and 70s, I believe. Whenever he does his like weird singing, his singing in this, but yeah, he's a very out there looking and acting character that is a big swing, quite frankly. And I think it works really well for me, and I think it works for you.
It
too.
may be very off-putting for a lot of people.
Yeah,
like I could see someone going to this movie and be like, that did not work.
Yeah.
Jesse Eisenberg, Lex Luthor style.
I could see this. I mean, I could see it very easily, just like people thinking he's very funny more than he is scary. But I think, like, especially when you get into like the backstory later and everything, I think he's just a very, very creepy character.
Extraordinarily like mentally ill.
Yeah.
In like a way that is like very, in a sad way, funny, but but because of that, very terrifying.
Yeah.
Simultaneously.
Yeah. But fantastic.
Dangerous.
Good Nick Cage.
Yes.
I think it's funny. There's a lot of reactions to this that I've seen online, like just random comments. People are like, Nick Cage can act? Like, yeah, he can act. What do you mean?
What do you mean he can't? Where have you been?
Nick Cage, he's just like turned into a meme for so long that I feel like a lot of people are just like, they see this or they see like Pig or something and they're like, what's he doing? I feel like Nick Cage has always been like pretty good though. I feel like he always like fully commits to the role, even if it's not, even if it's a bad movie.
Overcommits maybe.
Yeah. he's a committed guy, committed actor. So.
Yeah. No, I think that opening sequence is just disturbing. Oh, I brought my long legs or whatever. Oh, I forgot my long legs at home or whatever. He's got his code like the Zodiac killer. So I guess that aligns with that. Messages, that sort of thing, kind of taunting. But yeah, I mean, so a lot of, like we talked about, a lot of the anxiety is through just the way, the composition of the camera and that scene at night. Of course, you got to investigate everything at night in places that have big windows.
Well, before we even, get to that point, I think what really, alongside the opening scene, what immediately gets you just on edge for the rest of the movie is just how the main character's partner just gets immediately killed.
Shot and killed. And she has this weird
premonition.
Yeah, ESP-esque thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that's kind of a unique angle to this. Like, how did she know
this killer's in this
house? Like a hunch thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that scene, I mean, you have her and she like has this hunch or whatever, but just the fact that the guy gets immediately killed. I'm sure like if you go back and watch, the scene was probably building to it, but it felt like out of nowhere, but in a very good way. It was just super surprising. Made a lot of people gasp in the theater.
I was like, oh, jeez. Yeah. Got me. And then she goes in, and that's just tense too.
Yeah.
Something about those like duplexes, one covered in all that plastic. And
classic horror crime scene.
Scary, gross stuff. That puts you on edge too. And like all those sequences. And I know a lot of people that did have issues with this, were disappointed that it did go the supernatural kind of route for things.
At first I wasn't sure. Like when it started doing that, I was like, I wonder how this is going to turn out. But I thought it worked for the movie, for me personally. I didn't really have any issues with it. I thought it, like as the movie kind of got weirder, it felt more natural as we kind of learn more about this world and these characters, and it fits the tone. I think it even ties into, what I described with the tone for Hereditary, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's why it works. It's like, I think if I saw this pre-Hereditary, maybe that's why I didn't love Hereditary the first time. It's because it kind of goes down that route.
Yeah.
And I used to be like I was like, it's much scarier if it's like real,
Yeah.
It's kind of take. And I've kind of, not that it's necessarily like a bad take to have. It's just like, and I feel like I became more open to this type of movie.
And I feel like religious supernatural horror specifically is such a tried and done trope at this point. So like anything that has to do specifically with like or, you know, Christianity's form of Satan or whatever, like all that. It's like, all right, we've seen this a bunch, like whatever, but
Not really like this.
yeah, I think this takes it in a unique way. Doesn't really dwell on the religious aspect of it too much.
Doesn't explain anything. Like
No.
it gives you like little clues, like the dolls and the metal balls, but even that, it's like not really clear how it works.
You
like,
just have
if
to
you shoot
infer
it,
a lot of that.
If you shoot it, then you might be free, but maybe if you have to do, you know, like
Yeah.
But even then, it's like, okay, that's one of those things like, okay, if I watch it a second time, maybe I'll understand that a little bit better.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't. But I do think that's like, what's going on here? The doll imagery, just
Really creepy.
creepy doll. And then whenever they put the robe, the black sheet, and just the eyes
Yeah.
pierced through, reminded me of Conjuring 2 with
Phallic. Yeah, no,
The
I
nun,
got that
scene.
vibe too from
Just
how that looked.
Just disturbing stuff. And then of course just creepy dolls in general. Longlegs himself. And yeah, just very unsettling imagery throughout this.
Yeah.
Some of the scenes where it's like his face and when she's having that trauma, like that PTSD thing.
Yeah.
And like actually starting to remember these things.
Yeah.
That clearly she had like clouded. And a lot of this could be like in metaphor for trauma.
Yeah.
As a child and kind of that trying to push that to the back of mind and resurfacing.
Well, it makes her behavior throughout the movie just make all that much more sense because she is a very just, you know, keeps to herself, very quiet, emotionally suppressed person for the most part, and it's because she's repressed all these memories of her growing up around this stuff. And some of it maybe because of the devil's influence. Who knows? That's kind of kept a little vague. Some of it may be Longlegs' influence, but she's not remembering any of this, and it's definitely affected her. I think one thing that's really interesting about her performance prior to like the last third of it or so is like she shows like no emotion except for when she's talking to her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like her mom, like only. When she's talking to her mom, she'll like laugh or whatever. She'll kind of have these nice little moments, but every other time she's very just stoic. Just yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked that.
Yes, the performance of the mom too was scary.
Yeah.
She was
Leah Atreides.
what?
What the younger sister Atreides in the Dune 84 movie.
Oh yeah, the Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, yeah.
So yeah, I was like, yeah, how did we not recognize it? The Abomination?
Now she's apparently been a pretty consistent actor since then. I'm not super familiar with their other stuff.
Yeah, but that was just her. I like how they were teasing like, okay, how does he kill him and he's not there? And it's like when you're watching, you're just kind of assuming, okay, it's Satan somehow. Like the dad is getting possessed clearly. And,
Yeah.
But to have the angle of the mom being involved, I thought that was a unique twist that I did not see coming. Mm-hmm. And
I figure for me personally, I kind of was thinking maybe the mom would be involved just because of how like a big part of the movie she was.
Just present she was.
Yeah, all of that. But yeah, I wasn't thinking necessarily it would go as deep as it did with that. Yeah. So
one thing that did not surprise me was the partner detective had a daughter who was like, "Oh, come to my birthday party." I'm like, "Well, that's how the movie's gonna end."
I told you somehow I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
I was like that. You mentioned it after the movie too that there was a big gap in between that point being introduced.
You kind of forget about it.
Yeah,
there's enough screen time.
Yeah, and I think does she reveal the birthday party before they figure out the whole birthday thing anyway? I think that's pretty early on in the movie. So I think I just wasn't even thinking
weird
about
that the partner doesn't bring up that her birthday's on the 14th of the month. That's
something
convenient thing almost.
Yeah, somehow
from an audience standpoint. Mm-hmm. But still when you get to the birthday party, it's like, oh crap, and the doll's there.
The birthdays on the 14th are like kind of a little meme on the internet now because of this movie. I think I saw that like there's that clip from SpongeBob where you see his like driver's license or whatever when he gets it, the fake one or whatever, or when he I can't remember what episode that is, where Mrs. Puff gives him the driver's license. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And on it, I think his birthday is on the 14th of whatever month it is. So we were like, no, SpongeBob. Leave him alone. I think that's what it is.
SpongeBob driver's license. Front and back. Let's see. It expires on the 14th.
Oh, it expires. Okay.
Well, no, he's born.
Yeah, that would mean his birthday is also on the 14th then. Yeah.
No, SpongeBob. SpongeBob just turned 38 yesterday.
Wow.
Happy birthday, SpongeBob.
Happy birthday, SpongeBob.
Yeah, there we go. I thought a lot of this was just excellently done. Just building. I mean, the climax is great in terms of like, it's like an oh crap moment. I love just a big oh crap that you felt the audience just like realize what was about to happen. Then you see it happen. But you don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
I think they're the moment,
very intense.
The poster, like the moment that occurs when she sees the
She's
mom
gasping.
Yeah, I think that's a really effective moment too, because that's just, she saw her mom kill someone. So that's great. But yeah, that whole going to the partner's house and she can't really do much like while she's there, because the mom's also there, and like, so the partner goes in and just kills his wife in the kitchen.
I was like, she's not going to do anything about that?
Yeah.
I think she's just like in shock or paralyzed or maybe devil magic.
Yeah.
Takes out her mom, though.
Takes out her mom.
And her partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that girl is definitely possessed still, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that whole ending is, I mean, left very ambiguous as to what happens, because could be that she's now under the influence and is going to kill the kid. You know, who knows? Her gun's out of bullets regardless. So who knows what's going to happen? They can't shoot that doll.
Tell you what, Holden, making a deal with the devil, don't think it ever works out.
No, I don't think so. The
no deal, devil.
I wanted to mention, because I had forgotten about this until I thought about it a couple days ago, but there's that scene where during the investigation where they go to, we haven't even talked about the survivor of the previous like killings or whatever, that character, when they go and like visit her.
Yeah.
And that whole conversation is very interesting, I think. And she had been catatonic for a long time until Longlegs came and visited her like the day before. And that's very interesting. Her not really remembering, but kind of remembering. But I specifically wanted to bring up the conversation with like the warden of that like hospital, that mental hospital, who they're like, you don't ID people when they come in. He's like, oh yeah, that'd be a good idea.
That's a good moment.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that was a funny bit. But yeah, no, I think it hits a lot more than it misses. I think this is definitely a noteworthy big swing of a horror film that is going to become a horror classic, I would say.
Absolutely.
And Longlegs will long live in the lexicon of horror fans.
I would think so.
Will we get another entry? No,
probably not.
Because Longlegs bashes his head into a table.
Yeah.
I'm like, this scene is ending with this man slamming his head into the table until he dies.
I really liked that scene. A piece of marketing I saw prior to seeing this was that apparently, like prior to that scene, Micah Monroe had like not seen what Longlegs was going to look like at all, and so she like goes into this scene, and they like, for purposes of marketing, they like monitored her heart rate. To like, and it like, I think her resting heart rate was 70 something, and then it like as soon as she saw Nick Cage in the makeup and everything, like it increased to like 120 something. She got freaked out even as an actor. So, but I thought I liked that interrogation a lot. I really liked learning about how apparently Nick Cage has been like living in their basement or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And like
she opens the door but doesn't quite go down.
Yeah, there's like all this like influence from both like the devil but also Longlegs about him, you know, getting away with all this stuff. The mom's helping out, as you said, with all the crimes, and the flashback of her doing that for the first time I thought was pretty good too. Yeah. Her reaction getting back to the car and everything. Yeah, that was all All great stuff.
The things you do for your children. Holden.
The
things you do for love. To quote Jamie Lannister.